The sport of polocrosse is a combination of polo and lacrosse played by two teams on horseback. Each member of the team has a handicap based on their level of skill. The higher the goal handicap, the better the player. The fourth annual Land Rover Durban Polocrosse High Goal Tournament took place at Shongweni recently. Ian Goulet explains the high goal concept.
So the concept of a high goal is basically the building of a team with the highest handicaps that you can possibly get. And this, you're allowed to build your team with players from around the world. So imagine in a sport like rugby, if you were just given an open wallet and told to buy the best players you could buy around the world, what sort of super team would you build? You know, there's a lot of online games at the moment like that now where kids do that. They build their super teams and they create their super teams. High goal is a lot like that. So over the last 6 months, around the world, people have been building these teams, and the only limit on the team is we put a cap of a total of 45 handicap on the team, and that basically means that all the handicaps accumulated of each player cannot supersede a total of 45. So all the men's teams painted are sitting at a 45 handicap, and that handicap is known as a goal handicap, and this is an incredibly high handicap, hence the name high goal. And this tournament is a tournament that happens in a lot of countries, but the high goal here, the Land Rover Durban Polocrosse high goal, has turned into the jewel in the crown of high goals around the world, and started only 4 years ago. This is the fourth one now, and it's turned into a hugely successful competition that players from around the world try and participate in.
The growth of the event into one of international renown has in no small part been thanks to the supporters and sponsors who've enabled players and spectators to enjoy the very best polocrosse competition on the African continent for the last 4 years.
Yeah, we do heavily rely on sponsors in this game to make it happen, and the sport as a whole. And the first Land Rover Durban High Goal was a toughie. I mean, we started 6 weeks before, and in 6 weeks we managed to put it together, and it was a mad scramble. And thanks very much to Jaguar Land Rover Durban for stepping on board as the headline sponsor. And I think once they made the jump, we got some other companies to step up to sponsor the individual teams, both the women's and the men's teams. And as the competition has grown and as the prestige around the competition has grown, it's been easier to get sponsors to step up. But we are in tough economic times, so we are hugely grateful as a club and as a tournament committee that the sponsors are stepping up to this sport. And I think the onus that we've put on ourselves as the Shongweni Polocrosse section is to make them get bang for their bucks. So this is a highly visible venue, and I think their branding up here is seen by a lot of the general public as a whole. So I think the mileage that they getting, certainly from what we've heard from them, is really showing a good return on investment for them.
We're well supported by sponsors every year. We get some new sponsors in, and the intention is to try and attract the right people to get the right value out of it. So we are extremely grateful for Durban Land Rover for being our key sponsor, along with the other team sponsors that come on board during the season.
While it evolved out of polo and is very similar to polo, there are significant differences between the two sports. Perhaps the most important being that unlike in polo, where players can switch horses during the game, polocrosse players must ride the same horse for the duration of the match. Ian explains why that makes polocrosse so attractive to players and spectators alike.
Yeah, so polocrosse is known as the king of the one-horse sport, and unlike polo, there's so many people that say, all right, you're on a horse and you're playing with the ball, it must be polo. And no, it's polocrosse, this one. Much tighter field, smaller than a rugby field really, and games right up in your face, so it's a fantastic spectator sport. And the nice thing about it is the barrier to entry is not huge. Polo, you've got to have up to 4 to 6 horses to participate. But polocrosse, you can get away with one horse. I myself only have one horse, and because of the way the game is structured, your teammates are on the field, you're taking a break during the chukka. When you come off the field, they come off the field, you go back on. So your horse gets a break both physically and mentally from the sport, as does the player. But you can get away with one horse on this sport, yeah. As you go into the higher divisions, it's advisable to have a couple more, but at the club level that we play, there are many social players that arrive. They've just got one horse, and they just have a really good time on Sunday afternoons and then local tournaments. This is top draw tournament. This is at a World Cup level, so there's a lot of really good horse flesh moving around here this weekend. But if you're into the sport socially, one horse is your barrier to entry, that's it.
As we know, the Land Rover Durban Polocrosse High Goal Tournament attracted not only South Africa's top players, but also a number of the world's best men and women, including the #1 ranked male player, Australian Jimmy Greels, which according to South Africa's top coach Bruce McClarty is very important for the sport in South Africa.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you're inundated with top players, and particularly the #1 ranked player in the men and in the ladies, actually, who played earlier today, his sister Lucy, it is only good for the tournament and really good for the sport.
So I was brought in as wild card, so I think I had the conversations with him around January, and yeah, really happy to come over and be a wild card, and obviously play with Land Rover last year, so I knew some horses there and was really excited to be brought by them.
Polocrosse is as tough a physical sport as you can get, with horses, rackets and the ball all being part of the fast-moving dynamic sport. And as Jimmy's bloodied face attests to, things can get quite physical out on the field.
Yeah, that's right. Pretty tough physical contest out there today, but the women, they also go pretty hard as well, as you would have seen earlier in the day.
While it may not enjoy the high profile of some of the mainstream sports, polocrosse is played across the world in Ireland, England, New Zealand, Australia, the US, Zambia and Zimbabwe, and it's also blossoming in parts of Europe and Canada. For a high handicap player like Jimmy Grills, the sport gives him the chance to travel and meet people all over the world.
Yeah, that's a massive part of it, and that's why I love polocrosse. Play a bit of footy back home, but that doesn't get me out of my hometown, so it's really good to play on the world stage against all the best from around the world.
One of South Africa's finest young players is Josh Leroux from Hilton in KwaZulu-Natal. Josh recently had the opportunity to go over to Australia and spend time with the Grills family at their Berrigoon ASH stud in Warwick in the state of Queensland, where he was able to learn much from Jimmy.
Yeah, no, Josh Leroux, he come over and spent about 3 months with us, and he was really good. He rode a lot of horses and learned a lot while he was over there, but to see him come over here and play in this standard of competition from what he was then now is credit to himself and his family. He's on fire.
The first Polocrosse World Cup was held in 2003 and has been held every 4 years since. Australia won the first 2 editions. In 2011 in the United Kingdom, South Africa lifted the trophy and did so again in 2015 when it was first hosted at Shongweni. The recent 2019 World Cup, held in Australia, was claimed by the Australian team when they beat South Africa 34-21 in Warwick. In 4 years' time, the World Cup will be held back at Shongweni, and Jimmy Grills is already looking forward to it.
Plan to come back and try and defend our title, which will be very tough over here against South Africa on their own horses. They're quality side, and I can't wait to come back. It's a great venue with great horses, and yeah.
The final match of the Land Rover Durban Polocrosse High Goal Tournament saw the men's match between the Land Rover team and the Rockville team, and it produced an absolute thriller that went down to the wire before the Land Rover team won 30-29. Dealer principal at Jaguar Land Rover Durban, Andre Schenk, enjoyed it all.
Absolutely on the edge of our seats. This was a game that I think if anybody had a weak heart, we wouldn't have survived it. But we managed to pull it back. We had the world's #1 player, Jimmy Grills. We had Lance Anderson, the best #3 in the world, and our local guy, Graham McClarty, pulled it back in those last 10 seconds to win the game. So it's something that we never really experience on a day-to-day basis, but what a magnificent game.
South Africa's won the World Cup twice since 2011, but there's no doubting the quality of our polocrosse players at the highest level. That all comes from a solid base, with young players cutting their teeth in the competitive local tournaments. Top player Bruce McClarty gives us his view on why South Africa is able to compete so well with the rest of the world in polocrosse.
I suppose it comes back to the fact that we are firstly passionate about it, and we have very talented sportsmen. Most of these people would have played in their day back at school level, either really good cricket, rugby or hockey, and that takes them on to being able to play a ball sport on a horse, and there's only 2 of those available, and that's polo or polocrosse, and I'm very glad that most of them have chosen to play polocrosse.
And certainly one that all of South Africa's polocrosse players will be aiming for over the next 4 years. The Land Rover Durban Polocrosse High Goal Tournament was yet another example of a sport played and run by passionate South Africans taking it to the next level.